and get this thing broadcasting so that everybody on the Facebook group can see it. So this is not on a public forum, a public group. It's in the closed group. So only people who have registered can actually see this. One second here. So as you can see on the screen right now, I have Brandon's picture because yesterday he was giving me a hard time about always having my picture on the screen. So I decided to put his up on there. What you guys think about that? Let me get this. For some reason, Facebook broadcast is not working. Do what? Well, what I did is I put your picture up here just to make a point. But no, he is not speaking. It's going to be me. But he really likes to see himself too. So I figured I'd put him up on the screen. But I do have another picture. So
I'm much more photogenic, I feel.
He says he's more photogenic. I don't know.
Poll button. No.
Let's make a poll and see who it is. So I figured instead of just showing my face or his, I'd also bring in my wife. And so throughout the presentation today, we have my wife and myself on the slides. So you can show both of us on there. No, on YouTube it's not closed, but it is actually muted today, so you won't hear any audio. And you're only in room 2 when you're actually watching it. And you don't get access to the visuals or anything like that. But the YouTube channel and the YouTube is an open forum there. Oh, good. Good. Brandon said that he's going to have his family in here making a cameo on Saturday, so stay tuned for that. I'm sure was it going to be during your session? Oh, I can give you another one for Saturday.
No, so just come in and say hi, so you guys can meet the family.
Cool. He's gonna bring him in so you can meet him on the family. So meet his family, and maybe he'll motivate me to have mine come. Who knows? So, all right, my Facebook thing came back up here, and it just went away. Oh, well. Well, I guess the keynote's not going to work today on Facebook. I'm not sure what's going on. I'll try it one more time. Thank you guys for being patient. Stop the live stream. I don't know what's going on. Well, who cares? I'm going to go ahead and keep on going because I know I have lots to cover and I want to make sure we get through all of it as we can. If you guys have questions throughout, please feel free to put them into the chat, to the Q&A box. So the Q&A box is how we keep track of the questions and answers to make sure that we get to every single one of them. So make sure you do that. And I don't know what's going on. This is driving me nuts that this thing is not working. All right, so I'm going to close that down. So we're going to talk today about the mindset of a high net worth individual. And the mindset of a high net worth individual is very important in this space because you're going to be courting a lot of high net worth individuals to invest in your particular projects, in your particular investments, or your particular deals. And so you want to make sure that you understand the mindset of the high net worth individual, and so we're going to go over that today. I want to first kind of talk to you a little bit about my background. So I know a lot of you know who I am, but just wanted to recap this for any of you who might not be familiar with who I am. So I'm Dan Handford. I'm the key principal and partner of PassiveInvesting.com, along with Brandon Abbott, who's been running Room 2 from yesterday, as well as Danny Randazzo. You're going to hear from Danny Randazzo and Brandon Abbott during the next session in Room 2. They're going to be going over value add. Is it a value add? That's the topic for tomorrow, right? Yes. Closing is the easy part. How to manage a value add property is what they're going to be covering in Room 2. So stay tuned for that. You'll get to know them a little bit more. I'm the owner of 5 specialty medical clinics here in South Carolina. We do what is called non-surgical orthopedics, PRP, prolotherapy, stem cell therapy, that kind of thing, non-surgical orthopedics, and sports medicine. So we have a couple of medical doctors, nurse practitioners, and we have right at about 50 employees that work for me in that entity. And I'm the president of the organization and own them 100%. I also have investments in $125 million worth of multifamily real estate. I have a portfolio that consists of over 1,300 doors. The founder of the Multifamily Investor Nation, the co-host with my wife, which you can see on the screen there, of the Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs podcast. So if you have not tuned into that podcast, I would highly encourage it. It's a daily podcast. So you might have heard Joe Fairless yesterday morning talking about it being a daily podcast and how much work it is. Yes, it is a lot of work. And so, yes, it is. So we basically interview entrepreneurs from around the world that have faced tough decisions in business, and we talk about with them what are some of the lessons they learned through making those tough decisions, whether they had a good outcome with those tough decisions or a bad outcome. And so it's a very good, I feel like it's a very good podcast for anybody that is an entrepreneur or a business owner or startup or whatever the case may be. You can find it by going to toughdecisions.net or going into your iPhone and just searching for Tough Decisions for Entrepreneurs, and the podcast will be there on your iPhone as well as any of the Android devices, whatever platform you're using. We are most likely on there. So I have, looks like Will is asking about how can you get the recording from classes from yesterday. So we made that announcement in the opening remarks. And so that was before this session, and those can be found on the forum. So you can go to MFIN forum, and they are, when you first log in, you got an email 2 days ago on how to register for that. So if you have not registered, go check your email, make sure that you click on the link to accept the invite. If you have any issues getting in, send an email to Stacy at multifamilyinvestornation.com, and she will do her best to get to you. She's been overwhelmed quite a bit with some of the requests, but she's doing her best to respond to those as fast as possible. But she can make sure that you get access to that. But all the links to the recordings are up, except for one of them, but we'll have that one up in the next probably hour or so. And you can also go to the closed Facebook group, because all of them are being broadcasted on there, except for this one, because for some reason the Facebook feed is not working during my session, which I'm not really sure why, but we will hopefully get to the bottom of that between now and the next session. So it's hard to troubleshoot things when you're in the middle of a session here, but yes, you do have access to all the recordings, and we stayed up late last night making sure that they were rendered and ready for you guys, and so you do have the availability to have that done. So let's see here. All right. Wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction of my family. So you can see my family there on the screen. On the top right-hand corner there is my wife. You can see her on the slides as well. In the middle there is my son. He's 6 years old, getting ready to be 7. We call him our tax baby because he was born on April 15th. Bottom right-hand corner is Chloe. She's the one that woke me up this morning at 6 a.m., which was the time I set my alarm, so that's actually not a bad thing. But we got to spend some time this morning together. Top left-hand corner is Callie. That's our youngest, so she is turning a year old this month. And the bottom picture to the right of me in the picture is my son, I guess, and then to the left of me in the picture is it's our right is my daughter Caroline. She's my oldest. So we have 4 children, and we're doing this alongside raising a family at the same time. And I know many of you are as well. So one of the things I'm gonna talk about at the end of this is a mastermind that we're going to be putting on, and so we'll just stay tuned for that. We'll talk a little bit more about that towards the end. But we're going to be putting together a mastermind. Some of you already know that we don't do coaching, we don't do mentoring or anything like that, but we have decided by request to do some masterminds. There's going to be some virtual masterminds, but it'll also be some in-person masterminded as well with our group. So Brandon Abbott, myself, and Danny Randazzo. So stay tuned for that. And high net worth individuals. Let's move straight into that. So high net worth individual, we want to talk a little bit about who these types of people are. Okay, so this is going to be a presentation that you're going to want to take a lot of notes on. So I don't like to do PowerPoints that I read off the slides. So for the most part, it'll be a word kind of remind me of what I'm going to be talking about, and then I will give you as much content as I can. So I don't put a lot of stuff on the screen, but the biggest thing with the high net worth individuals or high net worth investors, when you see that acronym HNWI, that's what that stands for. Okay, it's high net worth individual or high net worth investor for what we're referring to. It can be either one. It's not really, that big a deal which one you call it exactly, but it's high net worth individual or high net worth investor. And these types of people are going to be your doctors, your lawyers, your CPAs, engineers, investors. You're going to see some singers and athletes and some celebrities in here in this high net worth individual status as well. And these are going to be entrepreneur like people. So they're going to be very busy. They're going to want you to be to the point for the most part. Now, these are all kind of general statements. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to every rule, but in general, these are the types of people you're going to be dealing with. They don't like to have their time wasted. They don't like to be, doing things twice. They don't like ignorance. They want you to be to the point, and they're usually very busy and entrepreneur-like, and that's why they're very good people to be able to have as investments, as passive investors, because they don't have time to go and do real estate, but they have that fear of missing out, that FOMO, fear of missing out, and so you can go into it and allow them to start reinvesting some of the money that they're making into real estate, and you're now the one that's going to be able to control that and help them double their money and get more returns than they normally would in the stock market. And so that's obviously some of the advantages of real estate, of a multifamily real estate, is you have that capital preservation, which is very, very key when it comes to other people's money, OPM. So one thing I wanted to do is I pulled up some statistics about, if some people, might think, well, there's not really a lot of high net worth individuals out there, so it's kind of hard to find them. And on the contrary, there are a lot of high net worth individuals. Actually, according to the Capgemini World Health Report from 2017, the United States has the most high net worth individuals, with over 5.28 million people that are classified as high net worth individuals. So I'm going to go through three different classes of high net worth individuals. First is going to be the sub high net worth individual, and then we're going to have the high net worth individual, and then we're going to have the ultra high net worth individual. First off, with the sub high net worth individual, that's basically somebody who has a net worth of anywhere between $100,000 to up to $1 million. That's going to be your sub high net worth individual. Your high net worth individual is going to be somebody who has minimum net worth of $1 million up to $30 million. And then once you get over $30 million, that's going to be your ultra high net worth individual. Now, you can also say once you get over 100 million, that then you're a ultra, high net worth individual, but it's got to stop somewhere. So once you get over 100 million, you just got a lot of money. Okay, so it's not I don't know if they necessarily classify that as anything. So anyway, those are the different classifications and what you might see in those different places. But one thing that you have to understand about these investors, about any investor, is that you must get to the point of having them do three things with you. They have to know you, they have to like you, and they have to trust you. Number one, how do they know you? You got to show up. You got to be in front of them. You got to be present. If you don't do that, they're not going to know you. It doesn't necessarily have to be in person, although I feel like that's one of the best ways to do it is in person. But I mean, I have some investors that have found me online via some of the platforms that I have, and they know me because I show up and I provide some content to them, and I'm educating them, and I'm present, right? The second thing is they have to like you. Okay, you're going to have some individuals that won't like you, and that's not a problem. There are going to be people that won't like you. That's just how this world works. But you can't worry about those people. You just have to move on. Okay. The third thing is they have to be able to trust you. And so you have to build that trust. And one of the things that I'm doing to build that trust is creating an authority platform, right? That's what I have built up with this multifamily investor nation. And you need to think about in your circles, how can you create an authority platform? It's also why I started my entrepreneur podcast, because now I have an excuse to be able to invite and start a conversation with high net worth individuals that are entrepreneurs and invite them onto my podcast. And so there's multiple ways to be able to create an authority platform. And one of the panel topics today, I believe, is going to be on authority platforms. I think I think one of the panels this afternoon is going to be on that. Yeah. So the second panel in room 2 is going to be creating authority platforms to accelerate your success. That's what we're talking about. Creating an authority platform so they can know you, like you, and trust you. Okay. And so you have to have that. And if you don't, then it's going to be very hard, because this is a relationship business. It's a relationship business at every point. So whether you're networking to find brokers, whether it be a broker as far as a lender broker, or a broker for like a Marcus and Millichap, or a Cushman and Wakefield, or Capstone Apartments, or whatever the actual multifamily brokers are for the real estate side, or attorneys, property managers, insurance agents. I mean, there's so many people that are involved with this. It is a relationship business, and as far as your investors, you must build those relationships in order to get them to know, like, and trust you. I don't know how else you're going to get them to be able to meet those three criteria if you don't get to the point of building a relationship with them. You're not going to be able to just meet these people one time and then just ask them for $100,000 in your deal. It's just not going to happen, right? You need to make sure that you build a relationship with these people, and you make sure that you have a relationship with them. And so the next piece is about communication. You're gonna find that through the rest of this presentation that one of the most important things, one of the threads through the entire thing, is communication. Communication. It's one of the most important things that you can do for your individuals, is to make sure that you have communication. And this is where the majority of the presentation today is going to be. Okay, this all goes back to that know, like, and trust, right? Those are the three things. If you don't take anything else away from this keynote, make sure that you take away that in order for an investor to invest with you, they have to know, like, and trust you, and that you must communicate with them before, during, and after your entire process. Okay, and I'm going to cover each one of those sections. Okay, we're going to talk about what should you do in the before stage, what should you do in the during stage, and what should you do after. And this is before you have a deal, while you actually have a deal that you're raising money for, and then after you've already closed a deal. And so we're going to talk about each one of these sections here, before, during, and after, and go through these. The first thing we're going to talk about is the before, right? So the before is going to be what you're going to do with these investors, these high net worth investors, before you actually have a deal, right? Some of you are on here, you're new, you don't have a deal yet, or maybe you've been in it for a couple of months, you've been trying to find a deal, but you don't have one yet. Well, guess what? You can't wait to find your investors until you have a deal. You have to be finding your investors at the same time as you're finding the next deal. You can't stop that process. It's an ongoing process, and you must continue to be able to seek new investors. One of the best ways is to come to an event like this and make sure you take advantage of the networking. There's a lot of networking happening on the Facebook group. There's a lot of networking happening on the actual forum, the MFIN forum. Post something on there that you're looking for investors or whatever, and if they're interested, put their email in. You'll reach out to them and have a conversation with them, and you can start this process of this before, right? So you might still only be in this before stage, and you've never stepped into the during or after. But we're going to talk about each one of these steps so you know how to properly handle these people, because again, what is one thing that the high net worth individual does not like? They do not like their time being wasted, and they also do not like ignorance. And so you want to make sure that when you have a deal, you have this process down, and it's smooth, and it looks seamless. You don't want to have a lot of hiccups along the way, because it just makes you look bad. Trust me, you do not want to have that happen. So one of the things that you want to do is you want to have, in this before stage, you want to make sure you're sending out monthly emails and phone calls. I remember I heard in one of the panels yesterday for raising capital from Ryan McKenna. He sends out monthly emails. So do we. We send out monthly emails to our investors to keep them engaged. We want to make sure that we're always in the front of their mind. If you get an investor today and don't talk to them for 6 months until you have a deal, they're going to probably forget who you are, or they might have moved on to somebody else and already, put their money somewhere else. Now, they might have already put their money somewhere else between now and then, but they won't even know who you are, because they're like, oh, I haven't heard from this person for 6 months. I reached out to them, they gave me some information, and that was it. I didn't have any other communication. You want to make sure you have those monthly emails going out. They don't have to be long. I've seen some syndicators put out some pretty nice long emails, but they don't have to be long. They can just be very small snippet things, providing you some updates on what you're doing and updates and various things like that. I've seen some that have been even better than the long ones that are just short, concise. Matter of fact, if you're reaching these high net worth individuals, I would prefer them be a little bit short, a little like a Reader's Digest version, if you will. I don't really have the time to sit there and read, 3.5 pages on an email of you, talking about, lots of different things when it comes to multifamily real estate. A lot of your high net worth individuals don't have time for that. But also making the point to make phone calls. Now, monthly for the phone calls might be a little bit much, but it depends on the investor. So you kind of have to kind of gauge them and kind of see where they are. But at least making a phone call or sending a text message, updating them on various things and seeing how they're doing, and making sure that they have any questions or whatever is very good. It's important to have that relationship, because you have to have that relationship in order to be able to have that that ability to have that knowing and liking and trusting. Now, what do you do when you have these new investor leads come through? So we get new investor leads that come through our website every day. And so we have to figure out what is the best way to handle these new investor leads. And if you have a website and you're not asking for investors to put in their information, you need to do that. It's one of the most important things you can do to be able to do that. So any of you who have been to our website, passiveinvesting.com, you'll see there's a form there to fill out. And that allows us to be able to reach out to our investors that are new and to start a conversation with them. So the first thing that we do is we send them a company overview. We want them to understand our company. We want them to understand who we are, what we do, why we do what we do. And then in that email that we send them with the company overview, we're gonna send them a link to our schedule. And so for those of you who are in the VIP for the summit, you have been able to see what we do with the Calendly links, but we use Calendly. I like Calendly because it syncs with my calendar, and I can whenever somebody registers, it automatically puts them on my calendar. And if for some reason I have another meeting scheduled, Calendly already notices that and doesn't book anybody there. So Calendly, I think there's actually a free version of it. I use the paid version, which I think is like maybe $10 or $15 a month. It's not a lot, but it's a time saver for me. I know some people who have assistants that do this scheduling where they could replace an assistant with Calendly. Calendly saves me a ton of time, and it also saves my investors a lot of time, because there's no what's the best day and what are the best 2 or 3 days in the next couple of weeks, and then going back, would you prefer morning or afternoon? Okay, well, would you prefer 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock? There is no back and forth. Here's a link to my calendar, so you can go ahead and see what my availability is. And if for some reason none of those times work, let me know. We can always try to schedule it outside of those times. But you want to make that process easy for them. So don't just send them an email saying, here's our company overview. Let me know if you want to schedule a call. No, you want to be proactive with it. You want to make sure that you actually get to the point of making sure that they schedule that call. And then have that phone call with them. When you have that scheduled call, don't miss it. If you miss it, you will lose that investor. That's an easy way to get them to not like you. And that's one of the most important things, right? They got to know, like, and trust you. Now they know you. They're not sure if they trust you yet because they haven't talked to you yet, but they've seen you around. So there's a little bit of an inherent trust. But if you don't show up, or you're late, or you miss that meeting that they've already put on their calendar and it's on yours as well, they're already automatically not going to like you. Obviously, if you had some excuse about it or whatever, I'm sure they'd probably, maybe be a little bit more lenient. But using Calendly has been very important and very easy for us to do, and having those phone calls. And when you get them on the phone, when you're on that phone call, you want to make sure that you're discussing their goals to make sure that they align with your company goals, because you want to make sure that you're not going to have any issues later on down the road. For example, if I'm on a phone call with somebody and they start to talk to me about, I'm trying to figure out how I can invest my last $50,000. I don't want to have somebody's last $50,000 in any of my projects. I don't want to have that stress, if you will, because number one, that person's probably going to be calling me a lot. And most likely, if they only have $50,000 left, they're not a high net worth individual, right? Unless all of their assets are tied up, but then they still wouldn't be their last 50,000. I never want to have somebody's last 50,000. I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to people who aren't going to be a pain in the rear end, and that's really one of the things you're doing too. When you're having those phone calls, you're figuring out, are they going to be high maintenance? Because some investors are high maintenance and they will suck the life out of you. And so you have to make sure that you properly vet your investors and don't just accept everybody. You have to make sure that it's the right fit. And then after that call, you want to make sure that you send them a sample deal. Now you might be thinking, I don't have a sample deal. I haven't done a deal yet. I haven't put anything together. I don't have a deal to send to them. Well, make one up. Go get an offering memorandum online for a 150 unit, or if you're in the smaller space, in the 30 or 40 unit space, and put one together for it. And you can tell your investors that this is a sample project of a deal that you might see. And if they ask you, is this one that you did? You can say, no, this is just a sample. You don't have to lie to them. I'm not encouraging that. But, somebody yesterday said, fake it till you make it. Well, this is one way to fake it till you make it. You're not lying. You're just basically putting together a sample deal, a sample project, so that your investors, your future investors can kind of see, what to expect and what they're going to see. And then follow up with them to see if they have any questions with that. So I'll usually, after the call, send them the sample deal and the project. And in that sample deal, I'm sending them the original, usually I'll send them like the original email that was sent out. It'll have links in it, and it'll have, the offering, the investor package in it, and all that kind of good stuff. And we'll talk about that here in a minute when we get into the during phase. Right now, we're still in the before phase, so we haven't jumped into there yet. We'll get there here in about another slide. You always want to make sure you follow up, though, with questions. Send them the information after the call, the sample deal, and then make sure you follow up with them and see if they have any questions after that. And then add them to your investor list as long as they're a good fit, and continue to make those monthly communications with them and monthly phone calls or regular phone calls to make sure you stay in touch with them. Okay, so that's the whole before phase, right? And so you want to make sure you encompass all those things during that before phase. Next thing is during, right? So we're now during the relationship. You're during it's just during sex phase is all about what you're going to do when you actually have a deal to present. So first off, you want to make sure you're giving them some consistent deal flow. My recommendation is at least 2 a quarter. So every other month, you should be sending out a deal to your investors. Okay, and I know you might not be having that many deals coming about, but I'm going to talk about some ways that you can still do that. Sending deal flow, emails, phone calls, making sure that when you send the deals out, that you're including a couple of different things. So first off, let's just go ahead and cover the piece about important about keeping the deal flow going. So as far as the deal flow, you want to make sure the deal flow is consistent. And one of the most important things, or one of the things that you can do to make sure that important piece of deal flow continues for your investors, you don't want to be in a position where you have one deal and then it takes like 9 months to get the next deal. You want to have that consistent deal flow, and the way you do that is you start capital raising for other people, capital raising for other groups. You're like, and then you might go, well, I don't know any other groups. Well, start networking with other people. There's a lot of people here as attendees to this event that have deals right now. I can think of a few people right now off the top of my head that have deals right now that need people to raise money for them. So go onto the forum, type in there, I'm looking to capital raise for somebody else. And I'm sure there'll be a couple of people that'll go on there and say, hey, yeah, let's start a conversation. Let's get on the phone call and I'll tell you what our project's about and stuff like that. And you can help and get on the GP side of some of these deals and help capital raise for other groups. And it also is a reputation thing as far as, a reciprocity thing, that if you raise for them, it's possible, it's not a guarantee, but it's possible that they may raise for you. Just depends on what deal you put together and what their investor profiles are like and where they are in relation to where you are, as far as they might have a deal coming up and they might not be able to raise for you. So keep all of that in mind as well. But the biggest thing about raising for others is understanding that your reputation and your company is on the line, even though you're raising money for some other group. So just like they're going to vet you to make sure you're a good capital raising partner for them, you need to make sure that they are a good sponsor and that they are a good group for you and your investors. Think like an investor. You want to start to ask some of those difficult questions and making sure that you get down to what some of their experience level is. So reputation in this, and as far as capital raising, is very important. I've raised for other groups before, and my reputation has been even altered a little, not altered, but hurt a little bit. Not crazy bad, but it's been hurt a little bit. And it all came down to communication. Communication. And that's why I'm hitting this so hard, is that you must be communicating with your investors. If it takes you 3 days to respond to an email, that's not fast enough. If you talk about, if you send an email or a message to Joe Fairless, almost within about a couple of minutes, he's responding. And so if you want to model after somebody who's done getting ready to be over $500 million, he's in the process of closing a little over $100 million right now. That'll get him over that mark of over $500 million in his portfolio. But he is very responsive to investors. He has a system in place and a process in place. And that's what this is. This is a system and a process that you need to make sure that you put into place to make sure that you handle your investors properly. This business, as being a multifamily syndicator, when you're bringing on these investors, or even if you're doing JV partnerships and you're not doing the syndication model, it's still important to communicate with the people in your group. You need to make sure. But one of the other reasons that I will say that my reputation was hurt a little bit when I raised for this other group is that the communication was not there. The communication was lagging, and what happened is I raised for this deal, and they were going to be doing quarterly distributions, and all of a sudden they decided to hold off a little bit longer on the quarterly distribution, but they didn't tell anybody. Like, I had to ask them about, hey, what's going on? Because I had an investor reach out to me. You never want an investor to have to reach out to you to ask for an update or status on something, because you should be preempting those questions. You should be answering all those questions in your monthly updates and giving them that information. There should be no questions coming up about it. And when there is, it's because you're not communicating enough. You need to make sure you're communicating. And because there was a delay in the first distribution on that deal because cash flows were tight, and I understand why it happened, but it was the communication that was lagging as to the explanation to my investors that I couldn't present to them because of the lack there. So we are very careful on who we choose to capital raise for on our group. Right now, we only have about 3 people that we even capital raise for because of that. But biggest thing is that if you join a group on the GP side and you capital raise for them and they don't run it very similar to the way you do it and have very good communication, it's going to be very hard to continue to keep those investors investing in other projects with you. So especially when they delay distributions, because a lot of new investors, when they invest with you, they will wait till they start seeing some returns, some distributions before they plop down some more money on a different project. So those investors, you need to make sure that you handle them properly. One of the things we include in this deal flow that we send out, the email, is an investor presentation. Okay, this is a video. We're going to include a video tour of the property. So Brandon actually has a drone that when he goes on site on the property, he will throw it up in the air, get some nice panoramic and oversight of the videos, and he can also fly it down below and kind of go down the buildings. And it's a really nice a video that we were able to put together. And he'll actually be showing it in this afternoon. Yeah, so this afternoon, I believe that one's going to be at 3:30. So this afternoon at 3:30 in room 2, working with brokers and accurately estimating CapEx budgets with Brandon Abbott and Danny Randazzo, they're going to be showing you that drone. So if you want to see which drone he uses and ask them questions about that, you can. And that way you can understand a little bit more. Now, it's not one of those like cheap plastic ones that it's very hard to control. I got one of those for Christmas, and they were terrible. I'm like trying to do it, and it like slams into the wall. I don't know if any of you have ever used those before, but they are very hard to control. But this one is not. This one's a lot easier to use. Still takes a little bit of finessing, I'm sure, but not nearly as hard as the ones that don't have the GPS in them and all that kind of good stuff. So include the video tour and also do a conference call or a webinar to your group. Now, I'm talking about all this stuff, but at what point are you going to send out this information? Are you going to wait until you're 2 weeks before closing? No. Are you going to wait until you're 30 days out before closing? No. You should be sending out this information and having it ready the moment you sign that PSA. The moment that contract is signed, you should be sending this information out, right? You need to make sure that you can actually get the money for your particular project. So a lot of times you only have 60 days. You got usually 20 to 30 days due diligence, usually 21 to 28 days due diligence. And then you have, till 60 to 30 days later to close. Sometimes you can get extensions, and we usually get those in there if we need them, but you need to make sure you have plenty of time to raise. And a lot of it also depends on how much you're trying to raise. If you're trying to raise, a smaller amount, then it might not take as long. But if you're trying to raise money and you're trying to get, like Joe Fairless right now is in the process of raising for two deals. He's raising $35 million, right? So it's going to be kind of difficult if he did it, a week before closing. You don't want to get caught like that. You're gonna have hard money on the line, and you need to make sure that your investors are aware of the deals that you are putting together. I mean, I got an email yesterday from a syndicator saying, "Hey, we just got the LOI signed." So they already preempting their investors, saying, "Hey, we have a deal coming out. Stay tuned," right? So in the next couple of days, once the PSA is signed, they'll send more stuff out. So again, it's all about communication. It all goes down to communication. Also, I've talked to other syndicators about, have you raised enough money for your deal? And they're like, well, yes, I have verbal commitments, but do you have any money yet? No. And they're like a couple of weeks before closing. I'm like, well, what's your process? They're like, we don't really have a process. Well, you got to make sure you have that process. And that's what I'm sharing with you here. Send them the deal flow, making sure that you give the investor presentation with the video tour and the conference call. And also on the online forum, using an online form. We use an online form for the investors to fill out. So even if I talk to somebody on the phone, I'll direct them to go back to the email to fill out that form, so we get them to take action. It's a lot easier for them to fill out that form, and it's what it's called a soft commitment. So they're going to fill out a form and give us their soft commitment, and once we give them that soft commitment, we want to send out that PPM, the private placement memorandum, for your deal as soon as possible. Don't wait. Don't wait, until 30 days in to actually do that. Get that PPM done as soon as possible. If for some reason there's a delay, then inform your investors. When you send out the investor package, tell them the PPM will be available on this date or the week of this date. Don't sit there and keep on dragging them out and dragging them out and dragging them out. All it does is create more communication. And if there is any delays, communicate it, right? Send out an email to all your people who have soft committed and say, hey, just want to let you know we're in the process of this, add a few more delays, holidays, whatever. Include and making sure that you do that. Best way to send out these PPMs, to make it, again, with these high net worth investors, they don't like their time to be wasted. So one of the best ways you can do it is to have them electronically sign these documents. We use DocuSign. It's a little bit harder to get used to in the beginning, but it's a much easier process to just send out all of your PPMs at once and then creating a template to just send them out individually as more people commit to your investment. But in that DocuSign document, include everything in the one envelope or the one email. Include the actual PPM. In the PPM, include wiring instructions. On top of the PPM, include instructions on what to do on the PPM and make it very, very clear, step by step. And then also make sure you include the distributions for the investors, how they're going to get their distributions, whether it's via an ACH or a wire or a check. Make sure that you have them do that during this time. Don't send them another email later on and saying, hey, now I have our form ready for you to do it. Get everything ready and give it to them all at once. The more you can make this process easy, the better it'll be. And again, follow up with questions during this process. And once they sign the PPM, make sure you confirm with them that you received the PPM, and then make sure you send them the wiring instructions again or the mailing address again. Even though that's included in that envelope that you sent them via DocuSign with the PPM, make sure that you send those wire instructions in there on top and with the instructions, as well as the distribution route at the end. And again, communicate throughout this entire process. The moment you receive their wire, let them know you received it right away. Once you've received a check in the mail, let them know right away. And so make sure that you're documenting all this stuff and communicating with your investors as best you can. After. So the after phase. This is after the deal has already closed. Number one thing you should do is inform your investors that the deal has closed. And that's going to be sending out to your investors an email saying, we've closed, right? It's really exciting, especially for new investors, to get those emails that says, we've closed. And there's a sense of accomplishment, even though they really didn't do anything other than give money and sign a bunch of paperwork. It's a sense of accomplishment, okay? You need to send out those emails, and you need to be able to have those exciting times with your investors. And then in that first email that you send to your investors, you want to include the what's going to happen, right? You need to know, they need to know what's going to happen with the distributions. What are the expectations of receiving their K1s? How are you going to communicate with them moving forward? So even though you've told them, tell them again how you're going to communicate with them. Monthly email updates. That's one of the things I will suggest to you right now. Give them monthly updates. I suggest monthly distributions. Your property management company will be the one who can make those distributions. You just send them the spreadsheet every month, and they can make the distributions. You don't even have to do it. So I don't know why you wouldn't do a monthly distribution when you can do it like that. You can do it. The reason why I do it monthly, again, it's monthly being in front of them, whether they receive a check in the mail or an ACH, they're seeing me every single month hit their bank account. And I want them to see that cash flow every month. Plus, as an investor myself, I like cash flow, and I'm sure you do too. And the way you keep that cash flow coming is you do those monthly distributions, okay? And also, when we have monthly updates that we send out via email, and we also give out quarterly financials. So every quarter we give out our financials, T12, rent roll, all that kind of good stuff, profit and loss, so that there's complete transparency. Now, at this point, you're probably going to think about, well, you could use an online platform like IMS or CrowdStreet or whatever other programs are out there. Yes, you can. And if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. I don't prefer them because it creates more work for me, and it also creates more work for them. Because now, instead of making it an easy process, they're having to go online, fill out an account, and remember their login and all this other kind of stuff. And so for me, I don't want to create more work for myself, especially if I'm having to pay for it, and so I choose not to do them. But I know a lot of you use them. You like them a lot. That's perfectly fine. You can do them. It's just not for our group. So the other thing, too, is always be available to talk to your investors post-closing. So if an investor has a question, make sure you're responsive. Don't take days or weeks to respond to them. Get back to them right away. Jump on a phone call if you have to, and making sure that you answer and be very transparent during the entire process. When you're sending your monthly updates, include pictures. The investors love seeing pictures of their properties that they have invested in and what's happening on them. Vinny Chopra, the other day, he was on our new podcast, the MFIN podcast, and he was talking about a project that he had closed. And one of the things that he mentioned is that he does staff videos of the property manager and the leasing agent and the maintenance people, so that it can be a lot more real for his investors. And that's a great idea, to just go there, pop out your iPhone, take a quick snapshot, and get have a dialogue back and forth about the background or interview style or whatever with the staff that's on the property. It allows them to be feeling more connected with the property, and so the more you can do that, the better it'll be, to make them feel like this investment is a real investment. So consider doing some of those property staff bio videos. Again, educate, educate, educate. In your monthly emails that you're sending just to all of your investors, educate them. They're not a lot of times familiar with what IRR is, and cash on cash, and bridge loans, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and all of the DSCR, and all that stuff is new to them, and they don't necessarily want to know it to the point where they can actually do it, but they want to at least understand what those things are, especially when you start to talk about them in the monthly updates. One of the things we do is, at the end of our presentations that we send to our investors on any deal, we have a glossary that talks about some of those terms and defines them, but also in the monthly update emails, you want to make sure that you're educating them as well. And if any issues arise during any process after closing, you want to make sure you update them. If your cash flows are tight one month and you can't make distributions, that's okay, right? But you need to communicate it with them. They understand it's an investment. They understand that there might be some things that come along, fire breaks out, whatever. You need to make sure that you're communicating if anything's going to change. Not everything, right? You don't tell them everything, right? Oh, the maintenance guy just slipped and fell and there's a claim, whatever. No, you need to update them on things that are really important, that will make a change for them, that they need to understand. And so that if for some reason there's going to be a change in their distributions or whatever, let them know. Make sure that they understand what that is. All right. So go ahead, and if you have any, we're going to go through a questions and answers time here. Let me pop open my questions box here. So I know you have a couple of questions that have come through. One of the other things that I'll mention real quickly before we take questions is about the mastermind. So the mastermind is going to be going over stuff just like we talked about today. I mean, this is stuff that we are doing in our group right now that we're going to be covering. This is just one piece, one aspect of it. But we want to invite you to be in part of our group as part of our mastermind. And this is not for everybody. So we are going to be very selective on who we work with, because we like to work with people that want to work on a very high level, and we want to work with people that want to take themselves to the next level. And this mastermind will only be opened up during these summits. So if for some reason you don't want to join or fill out the form to see if you're a good candidate, then you won't be able to do it again until the next summit in June. So right now, if you go to mfinmastermind.com, it basically brings you to an online form for you to fill out to let us know that you're interested in the mastermind. Now, before you fill that form out, I want you to understand what the financial commitment is going to be for this. So it's going to be $15,000. So it's going to be $15,000. It's a 1-year commitment. There will be a 4 in-person in our offices, touring some of our properties, doing stuff with us, having hot seats live and in person. And then every month we're also going to be doing a virtual mastermind that will be just for the people part of the MFIN mastermind group. So if you're interested in that, go to mfinmastermind.com. I understand it's not for everybody, and I'm not going to do a hard sales pitch here. So just go to mfinmastermind.com if you're interested in that. As long as you understand that the commitments, fill out that form, and we will jump on a call with you next week, because this week, of course, we're finishing up the summit. We'll jump on a phone call with you next week, go into more detail with you about it. But also, when you fill out that form, you'll be sent an additional longer application to fill out, because we are going to be selecting people to be a part of this mastermind. It will not be for everybody. So let's open it up to questions here. Have a couple questions coming in already. First question is from Jonathan John. Dan, if I'm heading to a networking event, I like to bring something tangible to provide possible investors, but I don't have an actual deal or an active deal. What would you suggest providing them beyond contact information and a cool logo and a website? There's 2 things that I would recommend. So one of the most important things you can do is what is called a pitch book. And so that was actually made popular by Craig Haskell. So he was one of the first people. He's been in this industry for over 35 years. He was the one that really made that popular. And so if you can put together some sort of a pitch book or a pitch deck that talks about your company. I have a company overview myself that I use, and if you guys are interested, any of the information that I talked about today, if you want to put in the chat box that you're interested, I will load on the forum the company overview that we use. I'll load on there one of the emails that we sent out recently on some of our properties, so that informing investors that we had a deal. I'll even include the link to the video tour of the property. It's completely funded, and it's actually already closed, so it's not available. I can also send you the PPM, and as long as you keep all that stuff confidential, I'll send that over to you if you want to see how we present everything to investors. So if you're interested in that, type in the chat box, and I'll load it onto the MFIN forum website so you can go there and access it. So yes, I would definitely suggest doing a pitch book, and that would talk about various things that you'll see in that company overview. But then you can also put together print out a presentation that you have done for the investors. So like an investor presentation that you put together on a mock deal. So even though you don't have an active deal, you can put together a pitch deck on a sample deal. So depending on how many units you're trying to purchase and acquire, you can go on there and just put on to the get the offering memorandum from the broker and put together the program. And I'll put it on there. There's got over 35 people that are interested in that right now. So I will do that for those 35 people. And of course, anybody else, it's going to be on the forum, so you can access it as well. So hopefully that answered your question there. Let's go to Gary here. PowerLink, PowerPoint. I'm not sure what he's referring to there. Maybe you can clarify. What are some good questions to ask high net worth individuals to qualify them? So one of the things we always ask them is what are their goals long term for their investments? Are they looking for a quick win? Are they looking for tying their money up for a long period of time? If they are going to questions that I'll ask them as well is are you going to need to access your money over the next 5 years? Because if they're not, then it's a great investment for them. But if they need to take out their money in a year, this is not a marketable security, so that's not going to be a good investment for them. I also inform them and let them know, or ask them, I first ask them, what kind of returns are you looking for in your investments? Kind of see where they are. And then I'll inform them what ours are. And if at the end of the phone call or the in-person meeting, if I feel like they're a good fit, then I'll invite them to be on the investor list and tell them that I'm going to put them on there so they can see that. That's a good question, Akil, about what to do to qualify them. So next question is from Eduardo. Are you able to make the first distribution in the first month after closing? If no, what is your process? So typically what happens is we will make distributions after the first full month of operations. So we closed a project in December of last year, and it was actually December 14th. So we will make the first distribution in February and then monthly after that. And that monthly distribution and that first distribution will include the remaining days, the half of the month prorated for December. And it will also include the month of January, and then it will be monthly ongoing. And again, all of it is about communication, right? So with the communication, we're informing them that that's going to happen in that initial email that's being sent out to them. And of course, when we're sending out the investor information up front in the during phase, we're also telling them that the first distribution will be made in February. And that way they know and can know what to expect. That way you don't get a bunch of phone calls the first month and go, where's my distribution, right? So always make sure that you're communicating that no matter what you do. Good question there. Neil, is there a way of raising money for my deals without creating a PPM or a syndication? It depends on the deal. So I think it's one of those. That's a good question, but I'm not really sure what size deals you have or anything like that. But if you're doing if you're putting together large deals, then you really should be using a PPM and doing a syndication model, unless you're going to do JV. And so we did I did a webinar recently on the basics of multifamily syndication, and I talked about the difference between why you would want to do a JV partnership versus a syndication. So you can find that video on our YouTube channel to watch that a little bit further. Just go to YouTube and search for Multifamily Investor Nation. Next question is, before you find a deal in regards to the monthly emails, what are some of the educational aspects you would include to keep investors engaged? So I think I already answered that one, Devin. You might have put that in there beforehand, but just to kind of recap, they're basically in giving them updates on where you are in finding the next deal, one thing, and then also getting them giving them some educational content. One person who is really good about doing this is Devin Elder. He actually puts out videos, and he'll send some of those videos out to his people. Ryan McKenna is also another person who does really good about that. So go to the MFIN forum, tag those two gentlemen, and see what they're doing, because they do a good job. You can kind of see some of the updates that they're actually giving out to their investors. Great info. Do you keep all these communications like the before and during with those investors after that? After they didn't invest, or do you just change their emails and communication to keep them interested next time? You keep all these communications like the before. So the monthly updates are going to be property specific. So an investor will get a monthly update on each property that they are involved with, but they will also get a general update that will be going out to all investors, whether they have invested or not. So I think that's kind of the gist of that question, Bethany. Next question here is from James Gleason. Were you saying earlier that we should be sending new deals to our investors twice per quarter? What is the point of this? My point of that, and again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a rule that I would suggest you try to do. And the reason why is because you want to make sure that your investors, especially if you're trying to say that you're full-time in doing this, it's kind of hard to say that you're full-time if you're not putting together deals, right? So if you can't put together at least 2 a quarter, then go capital raise for somebody else so you can actually be presenting at least 2 deals per quarter, okay? So you need to be able to have the deal flow, because otherwise they're going to move their money somewhere else, right? Some of these investors have certain points throughout the year that they get an influx of cash, whether it be from a bonus that they get at work, or a distribution that they're getting from a business that they own, or they're selling off of a stock. You need to make sure that you're meeting them wherever they are, so that when they have money to invest, that they invest it with you and they don't lose interest. So keeping that up will be very, very important and very good. Next thing is, do I need to have 506B or C ready before I reach out to the investors? No, you don't have to have it ready, but if you can, that would be ideal. But in most situations, it's going to be very hard to have the PPM ready the moment you actually send out the email. But If you don't have it ready, make sure you talk to your legal team and make sure that you know and set a deadline for when it's going to be done. So I like to set the deadlines for Mondays. And the reason why is that it allows me to tell them that it'll be ready the week of that Monday. So I tell my investors that your PPM will be sent out and ready for review the week of, and I just state that Monday. That way it kind of gives me the entire week to make sure that my investors, my PPMs are ready. And a lot of times I'll even tell the attorneys, I want it done before, the Friday before. And that way, again, I just am making sure that I'm communicating properly and that I'm not overestimating some of my expectations for that. Do you ever hold back distributions and pay the whole thing cumulatively for an entire year to mitigate risk? No, we do not. We usually do an 8% pref on all of our deals. So far, we've done that. And we will do a prorated 8% return for the first 11 months. And then at the end of the year, on the 12th month, we'll make additional distributions if cash is permitting. Now, obviously, if the market turns and we don't have the cash to distribute, we may have to do that. But thankfully, on all of our projects that we put together so far, we have not had to do that. So good question there, James. Next one is, do international investors also need to meet the accredited investor requirement in a 506c syndication? I do not know the answer to that question, but we will be having a SEC attorney coming up and speaking, I believe, if not today, tomorrow. I don't see her on the schedule for today. She will be on tomorrow. So make sure you look at the schedule for tomorrow. That'd be a great question for her. It's going to be Jillian Sadati. Last two questions here are from Nick and James. First is, when do you consider your investor is committed after signing the PPM? And what if he changes his mind just right before you close? What are your options? Okay, so we do what's called a soft commitment, and that's where they fill out that online form, and then we'll send them the PPM once it's ready. Once they sign the PPM, that's what we pretty much would call a hard commitment. So if you really wanted to, you could hold them to that from the PPM. But I also want to understand that I don't want to, tick off any of my investors, and I also don't want an investor in my deal that doesn't want to be in my deal. And so even if I get right before closing and somebody decides to pull out, I will let them pull out because I do not want to force anybody into my deal. I want it to be voluntary, even though I might have the legal right to force them to do it because they've already signed the PPM. But because the PPM is a signed commitment that you will fund. So once you sign that, you're on the hook legally. Now, I've had investors that if things have come up and they've had to back out, I'm not going to force them to stay in. I would, even if an investor, a week after closing decided that they just didn't like our group and didn't want to invest with us, they wanted their money back, I would consider giving them their money back. Obviously if it's, a large amount, then I might not be able to because of, just from the ability to already being post-closing. But if it's a small, $50,000, commitment, which is usually our minimums for our deals, then if they don't want to be in the deal, I don't want them in the deal. So I usually take them out. So those are the different options that you have. So it's up to you. James Gleason, what is the benefit of syndicating versus passively investing in someone else's deal? Don't you still get cash flow, appreciation, tax benefits, etc.? So the answer to your question is yes, you do. The benefit of syndicating is that you can you are putting the deal together yourself, so you do have some more upside with that. And as far as the passive investing, the nice thing about that is that you don't have to do anything other than put the money in. And so you're completely hands off. And a lot of people like doing just the passive investing because if they have some money sitting around, they don't want to spend hours and hours and hours going and trying to find deals and vet them. And this is not an easy process. So if anybody's convinced you that multifamily syndication is just a walk in the park, you're wrong. It's a lot of work. I think it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy doing multifamily. I enjoy talking multifamily. I enjoy, talking to investors about it. So it's something that really drives me. But if it's not something that really drives you, or if you would rather be sitting on a beach somewhere and then doing this and you have some extra cash, you might be better off just to be passively investing. And of course, if you want to passively invest with us, thanks for that, James. You can go to passiveinvesting.com and do that and fill out the investor form there. I'd be glad to have you as one of our passive investors. And like we talked about with the self-directed IRA guy yesterday, one of the things that if you have a self-directed IRA, you are not able to invest in your own deal. And so you would have to passively invest in somebody else's deal. And you can do that with our group if you want to, or find another syndicator group to do that. But I would definitely encourage you to go back to the session yesterday from Nathan Long, where he covered a lot of that information. All right. So James is saying, so I'm saying then, why would you ever syndicate instead of passive investing? Well, it depends on what you want to do. So if you're a syndicator and you like doing that and you want to have some of that upside and you're not doing anything else, then that's great. I'll tell you this, James. I tried to retire. So last year I tried to retire and I was at the house doing nothing for about a week and a half. Drove myself nuts, drove my wife nuts, and I wanted to make sure I stayed active. And that's one of the main reasons also why I'm syndicating too, because I also like the active side of the syndication model. And I also like educating around it too. So it's something that's really been very helpful for me to be able to keep myself busy and not just sit at home and do nothing all day long. So that would probably be my reasons for doing that instead of just being a passive investor. But if you are a high net worth individual and you're busy and you're already running a business and you have that fear of missing out, or if you're a real estate agent or some other professional and you are already making a lot of money, and if you move your focus to syndicating instead of just being a passive investor, your other income from your regular position might actually go down because you can't perform as well. So I've actually talked to some people about that before, where instead of trying to go through the process of spending the time and energy and effort syndicating, why don't you just become a passive investor, because you're going to have a really good upside, because you'll be able to not lose sight of what you're currently doing and have lower income in another area because you've changed your focus. Mitch is asking, how much reserves do you source in the deal? We talked about that in another segment. It is deal specific. One segment that I would refer you to is Nikolai Ray's. He talked about the multifamily risk mitigation. It was a phenomenal session, and it will blow your mind listening to Nikolai Ray. So go find his session from yesterday. So make a note of that. He talked a lot about the various ways to be able to mitigate risk, especially as we're moving into a possible soft market. Do you pay preferred returns on value add deals? Seems like you may need the cash to do the renovations. That's a great question. And it depends on the deal. So yes, sometimes on the value add deals, the cash is tight up front. And so one of the things we might do to kind of make it a little bit less of a risk of a deal, because tight cash flows are tight, is we'll raise more in the operating reserves to make sure we have enough cash. And then with that extra cash, as we don't need it, will be sent back to the investors once the cash flow gets built up from the actual investment itself. So it all depends on the deal. It doesn't happen to all of them, but you definitely want to make sure that you do that. All right. During the break, could you please check the chat box stopped working for me? Others' comments showed up, but I'm not able to type or add anything. Sorry if you need to find it. Okay. I'm not sure. It might be. Is anybody else having problems with the chat box? I think I'm getting plenty of questions coming through. But if you have to, you might have to just log out and log back in. That might be the best thing to do. So if you want access to some of those documents, just go to the MFIN form, and I'll be glad to send those out to you. So if you're interested in passive investing with our group, just go to passiveinvesting.com and you can enter your information there. I'll go ahead and type in the link to that right now. That way you can jump over there during the break. Going to take a quick 10-minute break. We'll be back here in room 1 is going to be, let's see, room 1 is going to be opportunity zones with Cliff Oxford. And then we'll also have in room 2, closing is the easy part, how to manage a value add property.